Hello and welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of sports. And the Stanley Cup Finals has crowned a champion. The Colorado Avalanche have defeated the Tampa Bay Lightning in 6 games. Now, I know we said we were going to do a video for each game, kind of dropped the ball on that. Life got in the way. It didn't happen. But we will be recapping each one of the games and how we got to the Avalanche.
Still definitely want to talk about the series. It was still a very fun series to watch for everybody who tuned in for every game. And hey, I managed to call it with the Avs in 6, but we'll take a look at how each of these games went down the line.
Yeah, Tim, it was your turn to get the series prediction right. I thought it was going to go to a 7th game, but Tim, you got it right. Avs in 6, and it was a heck of a series. So without further delay, you ready to jump into it?
Let's run it.
All right, so I'm going to lightning round each of the 6 games that were played in the Stanley Cup, starting with Game 1, where the Avalanche took it on their home ice 4-3 in overtime. Andrei Burakovsky, he netted the game winner in overtime. The Avalanche jumped out early, took a 3-1 lead with goals by Gabriel Landeskog, Val Nichushkin, and Arturi Lehkonen, but the Lightning stormed back, and obviously Burakovsky, he sunk the game winner. It's really back and forth in that one, and it was only a taste of what was to come. But Game 2 was a completely different story as the Colorado Avalanche ran absolutely roughshod over the Lightning in a 7-0 rout. The Avalanche looked like
after the first game, that was just a complete shocker out of nowhere, because we were like, oh man, this is how the series is going to look like. It's going to be tough games. And the Avalanche just went, boom, let me just smack 7 goals on your head. And their defense really came up in clutch as well, because they never gave Tampa Bay a chance to come back.
Yeah, I don't know what was more surprising, the fact that Colorado beat them as handily as they did, or that Andrei Vasilevsky, the absolute brick wall, had a night like that. I mean, it happens to everyone, and that's just hockey, but you never expect it for a good as goaltender as he is.
Because as we pointed out, especially in the beginning, he's really good. So the really Avalanche definitely did do a very good job this series of showing the fact that they can expose even the best goalkeepers out there. They have that really high-powered offense that just found ways to get goals in the back of the net.
Yeah, and of course, Avs coach Jared Bednar said it was about as close to a perfect game as you can get, and it certainly looked like it. Like through the first 2 games, the Avs were up 2-0. They looked like the clearly better team, but then we go to Game 3, and we remember that the Tampa Bay Lightning were the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions entering the series.
They weren't going to go quietly.
They were not going to go quietly into the good night as they won 6-2 in Game 3. They bounced back in a big way and cut into the lead. They scored 4 times in the second period. It looked like a close game, and then they just kind of blew right away, and they found a way to neutralize the Avalanche speed, which was a big part of their Game 2 victory, and they figured out Darcy Kemper, who was surprisingly good through the first 2 games. It was also a big bounce-back night for Andrei Vasilevsky because he did not let much get by him. And then in Game 4, we have the other overtime thriller as the Avalanche took a 3-1 lead by winning 3-2 in Nazem Kadri's comeback night. He nets the overtime goal and pushed them at that point within 1 win of the Stanley Cup. In that game,
that truly game changer game here, because you talk about both overtime games going to the Avalanche in this series, and that 120% made the difference. Especially, I know we'll get into it a little bit here, but the controversy surrounding the overtime goal in this one. You talk about an interesting way to win such a deciding game, and this was a huge turning point in this series for them to get this win.
Yeah, because at any point when you're going into Game 4 with either team up 2-1, it's either a chance to really put the foot on their throat.
It makes it really difficult, or all of a sudden it's back even ground. So it's like it's a tough one to lose in such a controversial and close game.
Mm-hmm. And like the controversy was that the Avalanche had too many men on the ice. In the original scorecard from the NHL, it said that they had 6 skaters, which is indeed illegal, but they changed it back. They went to the referees and it's like, we found nothing wrong with too many men on the ice. It was fine. But definitely the Lightning were not happy about that. But Lightning
fans are going to be talking about that one for a while. That's for sure.
Yeah, they said that one was going to sting a little bit more. But I want to talk about the man who netted that goal, Nazem Kadri. He suffered multiple breaks in his thumb in the Western Conference Finals against Edmonton and was supposed to be out 6 weeks after that. But in his return, he came up in a big
Some
way
guys
that
just
the
want it
Avalanche
more,
really
and
needed.
he came back and, like you said, did exactly what they needed him to do. And I know that's something that he himself, especially in the entire Avs fan base and organization, is going to remember for a long time, because those are the memories of, that's when you did exactly what you needed to do at all costs, seemingly. And I'm certain that he wasn't feeling his best in this series, and when he came back, but he fought through to make a big contribution, and boy did he in such an important game.
Well, when you're on the biggest stage in the Stanley Cup Finals and you've had as many playoff disappointments as the Avalanche had, which we will get into later, there's really nobody that wants it more. And as tough as hockey players are, they're fighting, they're skating, they're sweating, they're bleeding. Like, Nazem Kadri is not the only one that played through broken bones on that Avalanche roster. Andrei Burakovsky broke his hand and his foot and still kept playing in that series. So just the toughness and grit that these guys, not just like the Avalanche in general or the Lightning, because they're a gritty team in their own right, just hockey players in general display, especially on the biggest stage.
Built to work through pain.
They're built to
It's a very painful sport, and just in general with the rough play itself, whether it be getting banged up against the boards or just the physical nature of the type of movements they have to do. But all power to all different types of hockey players out there and whatnot. It's quite a tough sport.
Yeah, and we'll go on to Game 5, where the Stanley Cup was on ice in Colorado at their home, and it was wheeled back out because the Lightning spoiled it with a 3-2 victory. They survived on the road, and they forced a Game 6. Corey Perry said that's what good teams do. You find a way. Andrej Palat slides the go-ahead goal past Darcy Kemper to extend the series at least one more game. And Andrei Vasilevsky, we talk about him once again. He was excellent with 35 saves. He was peppered with shots all night, but he only let 2 by him, which was enough. But then we go to Game 6 in Tampa Bay, where the Colorado Avalanche sealed it and won their first Stanley Cup since 2001. And
that's a while.
It is wild. It is a long time coming. And it was another game where the Lightning took an early lead and the Avalanche battled back. And then in the third period, they just kind of controlled the puck after they took the lead, and they limited the shots on Darcy Kemper, which the defensemen for the Avs, Devon Toews and Cale Makar, those
dudes are tough.
Yeah, they are tough. Cale Makar, the winner of the Conn Smythe Trophy for the MVP in the Stanley Cup playoff.
Very deservingly so, I might add.
Very well deserved, but the Avs, they take the Stanley Cup in 6 games. It's been a long road coming for the Avalanche and their fans. But Tim, what do you have just overall in this series?
I mean, the one thing that I think that I guess I did see coming for a majority of the series is the fact that both teams, I thought, were going to figure each other out enough to score a lot of goals. Up until these last 2 games in the series, you saw a lot of goals being scored because obviously we talked about the offensive firepower that the Avalanche had, but obviously the Tampa Bay Lightning were no extreme defense only team in their own right. So you had guys on both sides that were going to be able to put goals in the back of the net. And you saw a lot of that, which made for very, very exciting games. And you talk about exciting. The overtime games are really, really exciting when it comes to the Stanley Cup Finals. Not oftentimes do you get multiple overtime games in one singular Stanley Cup Finals series. So just overall a really exciting series. But to look at individual guys, individual teams, I mean, we talk about Conn Smythe winner Cale Makar. That dude had such a massive effect on not only this series but their entire playoff run for the Colorado Avalanche. I mean,
what he did was so impressive. Not just this Stanley Cup playoffs run, but just his entire career, where he burst onto the scene and
I think he's just going to keep getting better and better. Really, I mean, obviously it's hard to repeat numbers, but yeah, you talk about he's still really young. He has room to improve despite his amazing play throughout this year.
He's already established himself as the best defenseman in the NHL by winning the Norris Trophy this year. Like the playoff run that he went on as a defenseman.
Talk about his year for hardware. Whew.
29 points
came out of this year
20
with
playoff games
quite a few trophies.
For Cale Makar. That is astronomical to score 1.5 per playoff game that you play in. It just shows to the
As
level.
a defenseman, no less, because you talk about a lot of guys in some of the other lines that, I mean, you can get assists and goals, and that oftentimes is an easier way of getting your numbers up. But as a defenseman, doing the dirty work on both ends, just having such a massive effect on the outcome of the game, that's what brings teams up above the rest. And that's, of course, what made the Avalanche preseason favorites to win the Stanley Cup Final. And lo and behold, they actually came through and did it.
And they're Stanley Cup favorites for next year.
I mean, it's kind of hard to vote against the not only the previous Stanley Cup winners, but also you look at the core of their team. You talk about their age and their ability to improve.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere.
Tough to argue against.
Soon. Yeah, but before we talk about the road that the Stanley Cup champs took to get here, let's just talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning, because what they did over the last 3 years definitely deserves recognition, how good that they have been. I definitely think this year's version of the Lightning was the weakest of the 3 Stanley Cup teams.
Arguably, I would definitely agree. You talk about, especially every year that your core gets older, after they sort of exit their young years, it's you never know exactly what version of those guys you're going to get back. And granted, they're all still extremely talented hockey players, but you talk about a span of 3 years,
a lot can happen
a lot can happen to an organization, to a team, and to these guys individually over the course of 3 years. But they're still an amazing team, an incredible organization. You talk about a dynasty that is really very rarely heard of in terms of the success they had over a 3-year period. Truly incredible, and you don't want to overshadow it, even with the Avalanche being able to come out on top this year and break their drought.
Yeah, and let's not take out of context what I said about this year's version of the Lightnings being the weakest out of the 3 teams, because
it just proved how good the other 2 were.
Still look at the teams behind them. The weakest team still made the Stanley Cup Finals, and behind them you have not 1 but 2 championship rings to go along with it. So it's just an incredible 3-year run, an incredible run of longevity. And even though the Lightnings have some major questions to answer in the offseason,
they're gonna have to do some figuring out of what things they're going to do to try to rerun that roster in some way, shape, or form.
But I think right now, we just need to enjoy what is and how good this team is, and
absolutely
how incredible what they accomplished was. And, although the Lightning experienced disappointment this year, I feel so bad for Corey Perry, because he's the other headline for the Lightning. Because imagine going to the Stanley Cup Finals with 3 straight years with 3 different franchises, and you lose.
And the third, you go to the team that has beaten you in the last 2, and you're like, all right, this is gonna be my chance. We're finally gonna get it, and then finally somebody overtakes you, and on the wrong side of history once again.
He was with Dallas in the COVID year, and then the Habs the next year, and then this year, if you can't beat them, join them. But oh boy, what
we'll see where he ends up next year.
Yeah, maybe he'll promise them a Stanley Cup berth. But let's talk about the champions. This is their 3rd Stanley Cup in their franchise's history, in 96 and 2001. But let's flash forward to a couple years back, 2017, where the Colorado Avalanche were the worst team in all of hockey. They went
quite a turnaround, quite a rebuild.
They went 22, 56, and 4 that year, only 48 points. Let's compare that to this year, where they scored 100. They had 119 standings points this year, and Tampa Bay had 110. So imagine just 5 short years ago.
Yeah.
And on that roster, you see 5 names that are on this Stanley Cup championship team. That would be Nathan McKinnon, Gabriel Landeskog, the captain, Mikko Rantanen, Eric Johnson, and JT Compher. And they have suffered 4 years of playoff disappointment after being the worst team in hockey, because in 2018, they lost in the first round to Nashville. In 19, they lost in the second round to the Sharks. In 20, they lost in the second round again to the Stars. And then in 21 last year, they lost in the second round to the Knights. So
they stuck it through. They put faith in their organization and in the rebuild. And lo and behold, their hard work
They are
has come to
rewarded.
fruition, and they were able to lift and dent the Stanley Cup
And dent the Stanley Cup.
this year.
They don't even hold it for 5 minutes, and then they just dent it right on the ice. I mean, you had one job. Well, I will say this, Tim, a dented Stanley Cup is better than no Stanley Cup at all.
And
And
I am sure they will 100% enjoy every little nick, scratch, and dent on that Stanley Cup over the next couple of months as they truly go about celebrating this victory for not only them as individual players, but for the organization and fan base as well. Because I know just how excited they've been over this past couple of days celebrating just what this Stanley Cup meant to them.
yeah, just watching the look on guys like McKinnon and Landeskog and Rantanen, just seeing their faces after playoff disappointment after playoff disappointment, not even making it past the second round. The Toronto Maple Leafs are hopefully calling, but be that as it may, they are Stanley Cup champions now, and they have their ring. Before we wrap up, Tim, is there anything else you got?
I mean, it was definitely a really fun series to watch, and of course, we didn't get the chance to cover it every game like we wanted to, but still, it's hard to take away from exactly the firepower that was in this series, and it was a super fun one to watch. So we'll see what happens going into the next season for them, because it's definitely those power rankings, the preseason power rankings, are certainly gonna see some shakeups coming into the beginning of the season. So. Well, it's a wrap on one season and on to the next.
Yeah, and before hockey season rolls around again, we'll have plenty of other sports to cover. You name it.
Can't wait to get back to those.
Want it? We'll give it to you. So, like and subscribe for more Running the Table content, and we out.